Hi everyone, I wanted to tell you guys a story about a place I went to every summer from maybe ages 9 through 12 as a child, and this place was called Camp Grandpa. I know that is a very strange name, I'm well aware, but I will explain everything about Camp Grandpa and kind of the goings on there, and I'm going to tell you, there a lot of things happen at Camp Grandpa, some good, some strange, and this story is going to be about one of the strange ones. If you like it, I have millions probably of stories from Camp Grandpa. So, for only going there for like 4 years, I went there for 4 years. So this story is about my third year at Camp Grandpa. Now, you may be wondering, what the hell is Camp Grandpa? That sounds weird. And I mean, it was a little weird. I mean, it wasn't very long. It was about a month long. So it was the entirety of July every year for us. That would be Camp Grandpa. And it was run by these old men. I know saying we had a summer camp that was run by old men is creepy sounding, but I promise you, these men were retired. They were members of our community in our neighborhood, and they were retired pediatricians, retired teachers, retired coaches, things of that nature, where they used to work with children a lot. And they were all perfectly, well respected and everything like that. So we trusted them to run this month-long summer camp. And that was the reason it was called Camp Grandpa. I don't know if that was the official name for it or if somebody just started calling it that and Camp Grandpa is what stuck. But Camp Grandpa is what it was called. And it was the whole kind of idea of Camp Grandpa was that it was anti-technology. So we did not, I mean, I know a lot of summer camp is like that. It's kind of like living off the land. You learn how to make fires and, stuff like that. But Camp Grandpa was very, 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 sorry, I think my poster is falling off the ceiling. So hopefully that doesn't fall on my head in 2 seconds. It was very anti-technology, more so than basically any other thing you can think of. We did not have electricity. We didn't have like running water. That camp was hosted right next to this big, running clean creek. So we would wash our clothes in the creek. We'd filter water from the creek to drink. Any kind of thing that involved water, we would have the creek for. So the whole idea of Camp Grandpa, I think, was these old guys that were reminiscing on their childhood, their technology-less childhood. And also, it's worth mentioning that I was around, it was the early to mid 2010s when we were at Camp Grandpa. So it was kind of like this era where it was the beginning of kids kind of starting to use technology themselves, right? And I think that these elders, that's what we called them elders, because I think we just thought it sounded kind of scary and cool, and Camp Grandpa was very, very boring, so anything to make it more interesting, we called them elders. And they kind of noticed that more kids were maybe on screens. I mean, it's nothing compared to it is now in 2026, but back then, it was like if you saw a kid on an iPad, that was just like well, yeah, it was bad. And people kind of freaked out about it. So yeah, Camp Grandpa, I mean, nobody really wanted to go to Camp Grandpa. For me, Camp Grandpa was not my least favorite thing, because if you followed the rules at Camp Grandpa, which there were not many of, you could basically do whatever the hell you wanted otherwise. So as long as you were very respectful of the no technology, didn't try to sneak anything in, didn't try to, do anything weird, as long as you couldn't take anything outside, from the outside into Camp Grandpa. So you couldn't take like a bunch of, sugary candy or, mainly because that kind of stuff attracts ants, and things like that. And you couldn't take like, if you wanted like an alarm clock, it had to be an analog, like old cartoon alarm clock. It couldn't have the actual numbers on it. So that's kind of how strict it was. But my parents were kind of micromanaging when I was that age. I wasn't allowed to just like roam freely. in my own neighborhood. So Camp Grandpa, like, you could kind of just run around. You couldn't go anywhere by yourself. You had to always have a buddy. But as long as you had a buddy, then you could do whatever you wanted, basically. And the elders went to bed very early. They went to bed at like 7 p.m. or yeah, 7 p.m. ish. So as long as, I mean, we went to bed, you know, you're 10, 11 years old, you're allowed to stay up however late you want. We would go to bed at like 1 in the morning, and we just, you know, goof off in the woods for hours, and that was pretty fun for me. But there were some kids that really did not like that because they were more spoiled, and they had access to more technology and stuff at home, or, you know, their Netflix or whatever. And Netflix was a thing back then, yeah. So we knew this kid named Little Jimmy, and his name was just Jimmy, but we called him Little Jimmy because at age 10 or 11, he was like not even 4 feet tall, which is kind of unusual. So we called him Little Jimmy. So Little Jimmy had he had the ADHD, and he was kind of one of the, but he was the first person I knew that even had that. He's the reason I know what that is. He was very fidgety, and he was you know, he just didn't have a good attention span, and they didn't really give him anything to manage his ADHD. They just kind of let him loose like that, even though they knew he had it. So Little Jimmy, for Little Jimmy, Camp Grandpa was like hell on earth, basically, because it was just a complete detox of everything that Little Jimmy held sacred. We could bring books to Camp Grandpa, but we couldn't bring comic books. We had to bring like literature. So he was just in another world of suffering. And, you know, he'd always try to like make these like fun little games and try to find some way to entertain himself, but he just hated Camp Grandpa. And because he hated it so much, his parents made him go every summer. They enforced it way more than anybody else, because they were like, Jimmy, this is the only time of year where you're not going to be, you know, 2 inches away from your mom's iPad watching YouTube videos. And I'm telling you, 1 week without a YouTube video would send this kid into a spiral. It was insane. So Little Jimmy, the third year we went to Camp Grandpa, he's getting sick of it. And he hatches this plan to sneak in his mom's iPad. And I don't even know why he wanted to do that, because like I said, there was no reception out there. There was no cell service. Like, you couldn't do much on an iPad. But I think he would get bored, and he would just use the damn Photos app. Like, he didn't even need an internet connection. He just needed something to click on, you know? And I understand. I mean, I also liked that stuff when I was that age, for sure. I wasn't that bad, but yeah, Little Jimmy was just, oh my gosh. And he told us this plan. He was gonna sneak his mom's iPad in under the like insert, the bottom of his duffel bag. You know, duffel bags sometimes will have a little insert that you put to kind of give them structure. So Jimmy, he put the iPad underneath that. And the elders didn't search our bags, funnily enough. I mean, if you had something sticking out of your bag, they'd kind of give a once over to the tent. We had these platform tents, these big, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's this big canvas, you know, structure with a wooden bottom. It's better than like a fold, you know, a tent that you have to put up yourself. But the problem with platform tents is they get very easily infested with spiders, and they're dark and they're dank, and they're not desirable. But I mean, I'd take one over a damn, you know, little tent that you have to set up yourself, and it just blows over the gust of wind. So yeah, they didn't look through our bags or anything, but they would kind of, you know, look around the tent. So, you know, you wanted to make sure nothing was going to accidentally be sticking out of a bag or something like that. So Little Jimmy, yeah, he would take the iPad out every night, and we would all, I mean, once we realized that it was way more fun to be on an iPad than it was to go, you know, do fuck all in the woods for 8 hours or whatever, we were all on the iPad. And usually what my friends would do, me and my friend Tommy, we would wake up really early, or we would do this before everybody went to bed. We'd stay up really late. We would go out in the woods, and we would take these like twigs and stuff like that, and we'd take this fishing wire, and because fishing was a big thing at Camp Grandpa. I mean, as you can imagine, you know, we take the fishing wire, and we would make these little kind of like creepy looking little structures, and we'd hang them from trees, and we would tell everybody that the Blair Witch had come overnight, and everyone got a big kick out of that, so that was pretty fun. And we kind of stopped doing that after the iPad came out, because we were all, I mean, it's like, it's an iPad. I mean, you know, you make Blair Witch sculptures for, you know, 3 years in a row. You kind of get sick of it. So it was kind of like our lifeline. And again, there's no service. Like we were just sitting there playing Angry Birds. We were sitting there, you know, we would film little skits, little videos of each other. And it was just so nice because I'll tell you, Camp Grandpa, it weighed on you. It really did. I mean, there was no air conditioning. There was just like nothing. So having a damn little iPad, oh my God. And, you know, little Jimmy knew he was going to, you know, be in trouble when he got home if they realized it was gone, and they probably would. But he was a soldier. I mean, he was like that. He was strong-willed, you know. He knew that it was for a greater cause, you know. So we were having the best damn time we had ever had at Camp Grandpa. I mean, we were just getting crazy, you know. So one day, and it's so sad because it would have all worked out perfectly. But there was this storm. The elders, they came in our tent one night. Thankfully, before we had taken out the iPad, but they came in the tent and they said, there's a big rainstorm coming. And anything that you don't want to get water damage, you need to put, they had these plastic like zip up bags that you could airtight, you could seal things in there airtight so they wouldn't get any water damage. So they said if you want to protect anything, you know, if you brought a nice pair of jeans, if you brought a nice book, you need to put it in these airtight bags because everything's going to get wet. Like, this storm is crazy. And everyone in the tent was just like, oh, ooh, you know. And we were all I was just kind of waiting there. I mean, maybe I should have done something, maybe I should have helped him, but I was just kind of waiting there to see what he did, you know, little Jimmy. So everyone's kind of frantically, they're gathering their alarm clock and their nice book and their nice t-shirt and this, you know, everything. And Jimmy gets, he's kind of bent over in the corner. He's kind of crouching in front of his bag, so he's kind of obscuring it. And he's wrapping the iPad in a pair of jeans. He got these nice jeans, and he was wrapping the iPad like, you know, as one does. And he was trying to stick the iPad into the kind of the butt of the jeans and then wrap the legs around. And I'll never forget, the elder, because it was 2 of them in the tent, turns to him and he's like, "Hey, Jimmy, what you got there?" Like, he didn't think Jimmy had anything. He was just wondering what the hell Jimmy's doing. He said, "Oh, Jimmy, what you got there?" My blood ran cold, and everyone in the tent, and the problem is, we all had so many stakes in this iPad, and we were all so scared of what was going to happen if we got caught. So every kid in the tent just was like, "Oh shit." And everyone stopped what they were doing. So immediately the elder knew something was going on, you know, because everyone was just like frozen in fear. And little Jimmy freezes, you know, what the fuck do you do in that situation? It's holding the iPad, you know, the jeans, it's not hidden yet. You can't just, you know, you can still see the top of it. And the elder's like, "What is that?" Like, he'd never seen one. Like, genuinely, he didn't know what it was. And little Jimmy is like, "Nothing." And the elder takes it from him, unwraps it from the jeans, and he just kind of looks at it. Everyone in the tent was frozen. And nobody wanted to say or do anything because no one wanted to be accused of co-conspiring with him, right? So we were all just like, it's also worth mentioning, no one had ever gotten in trouble like this at Camp Grandpa before. The most trouble anyone had ever gotten in, this kid once tried to smuggle like an orange Fanta. This is not sponsored by Fanta at all. I do not like that stuff. I think it's gross. Anyway, this kid tried to smuggle in an orange Fanta, and it was like all flat and gross by the time he eventually drank it and they found it. But they just kind of gave him a slap on the wrist and said, don't do that anymore. Mainly because that kind of stuff attracts ants, like I said. So we didn't know, we didn't know what was going to happen. There was no like, oh, if you do break the rules, this is what happens. There was no guidebook to Camp Grandpa. I mean, Jesus Christ, it was not a very professional camp. I don't even think most people knew that it was going on. It was certain, it was very makeshift. So it was kind of, and it's in the moments like that when you do realize you are just in the middle of the woods with no cell reception and a bunch of old men who can do whatever they want at any given moment. Not that they'd ever done anything, creepy or anything, but, you just kind of realize oh, Jesus Christ, this maybe wasn't the best idea if something were to go south, which it was going extremely south at that moment. So everyone's frozen, and it felt like an eternity of just like sitting there. When you are praying someone else says something or does something so that you don't have to be the one to say or do anything, and the pressure is relieved from you, but nobody was doing anything. Finally, little Jimmy, straight out of the tent, he shot like an arrow straight out of the tent into the dark woods, into the rainy, storming night. And without missing a fucking beat, and this will haunt my nightmares probably for the rest of my life. I still think about this regularly. This elder, this guy that had to walk behind us on hikes because he'd hold us all up if he went in front. It was every time he moved, it was like, these guys were old, Every time he moved, it was like he was gonna crumble if he went too quickly. He was just like stiff. This guy shot right after him, like full speed, completely. It was like nothing I've ever seen before. It almost felt like some kind of, it did not feel human. I'm not saying that he wasn't human. This is not like a supernatural tale. But it was crazy. And I think he had used to be a gym coach, so it wasn't that crazy that he kind of still had it, but it was just like, oh, Jesus Christ. And we were all, when you're that age, you don't know what the hell's going on. We were all just like, oh my God, what just fucking happened? And the other elder that was in that room, or the tent, he turns to us and he says, did any of you know about this? Did any of you help orchestrate this? And nobody said anything. And finally, my friend Tommy, because Tommy was one of those kids where he was bold. He was a lot bolder than most of us at that age, for sure. He was kind of always the one that had a little bit more edge to him, and he would kind of take the risks, or he sometimes kind of got, he kind of liked being a little bit. He was scared too, don't get me wrong, but he spoke up and he said, no, I'm sorry, none of us knew anything about that, and we were not involved with that, and we would never be involved with that, and it was disgusting. And the elder turned to him and said, you're lucky, Tommy. You're lucky that I like you, because I'm going to choose not to punish you for the abominable lies you just told me. And I felt true life-threatening fear in that moment. Because I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And nobody did. You could just feel it. And I was just like, I was standing there by my bed. It's dark, first of all. This guy's holding a fucking flashlight. And I was like, we're all about to die. That was my thought. We are all about to get a hatchet in our skull. And we are all about to die at Camp Grandpa. And everyone's frozen and nobody's saying anything. And the fucking elder's not saying anything. And then finally, he starts to like chortle, like these like piercing laughs, and he doubles over and he's laughing. And it was not a fun laugh to listen to, let me tell you that right now. He has kind of that old guy voice where their voice is very kind of gravelly and kind of high pitched. And so he just did not have a enjoyable laugh to listen to. So he explained that when he was done, chortling at us, he explained that he said there's nothing to worry about. Tommy broke a very, very important rule. The first rule of Camp Grandpa is do not bring your mom's iPad to Camp Grandpa. He broke a rule of Camp Grandpa, the most important rule, and he's gonna need to be punished, but it's nothing crazy. He's gonna be in solitary for a week. That's what they told us. And we were like, what? And he said, yeah, he's gonna be in solitary for a week, but there's no need to worry. He's gonna be, just fine. He's gonna be doing the same stuff you guys are doing. He's just gonna be by himself. And we said, okay, I guess, there's nothing we can fucking do about it. So we went to bed. And I did not sleep a fucking wink. I couldn't stop thinking about how fast that guy had moved. It was so creepy. But, there's nothing you can do. We were completely powerless. And none of us wanted to risk being punished ourselves. So we were just like, you know what? Little Jimmy had it coming. Unfortunately, he was our friend, but not that much. So we were not going to put our lives on the line for him. So a week passed. And I hate to say it, but I was worried about him for the first several days, but by the end of the week, there's only so much you can worry about someone's well-being before it's like, this is not accomplishing anything. So, I don't know. So, we finally saw little Jimmy again, and it was weird. I'm gonna be honest, there was a part of me, as morbid as it sounds to say, that did think he was gonna return covered in like bruises and cuts, like he had just been abused all week, which is terrible, and I didn't want that to happen, but I did kind of think that might be. But no, he looks completely fine outwardly. He was just, whatever. He kind of, he had his head down, he kind of, And of course we all said, oh my God, little Jimmy, what happened? What did they do to you in there? You can tell us, We were pressing him. And he just didn't want to talk about it. He did not make eye contact with any of us. He kind of had his head down. And he was just like, yeah, it's just like they said, I was in solitary, like, big deal. And he just didn't want to talk about it. And we were like, what? He used to be this super hyperactive, talkative. When you got him started talking about something, especially if he could complain about something, he would just go on and on. So we were all like, what the fuck is this? This isn't our little Jimmy. But he didn't want to talk about it. So that was kind of that. And that was the last week of Camp Grandpa. It was so weird. He was acting pretty normal, but the fidgetiness and the hyperactiveness was just like gone. I saw him, and if you knew little Jimmy, you knew how crazy this was to see this, but he would sit under this big tree by the tent and he would read a book. One of the elders must have given it to him because he did not bring a damn book with him. As a matter of fact, none of us did because we knew he was bringing his mom's iPad. So he would sit and he'd read his book. And I just remember seeing that and thinking, they did something. They cloned him. They must have, because this is not little Jimmy. So we made our fucking, you know, Blair Witch sculptures, and we washed our clothes, and we went fishing, and we, you know, made our dinner. And that was it. Camp Grandpa ended. And I'll tell you what, this is another story if you guys want to know more about Camp Grandpa, because this was crazy too. My friend Tommy was so angry that little Jimmy wouldn't speak up about it that he said next summer I'm gonna sneak something in and I'm gonna tell you guys what they do because I'm gonna get caught on purpose. And I'll tell you all about how that went because it was very different from little Jimmy. If you guys are curious about that, I can do that too. But yeah, camp ended that summer, and his parents came to get him. They actually didn't. It was clear that no one had told them because they were like all smiles and they didn't seem to have any kind of issue. And you know, I think it was like his mom didn't use her iPad very much or something, so they just didn't notice it was gone. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the inner workings of little Jimmy's home life, but no one seemed to be in trouble, and it was all kind of fine. So, you know. His parents did notice that he wasn't really making eye contact with them or being very, you know, he wasn't being super, you know, crazy or whatever, however he usually acted. But I think they just attributed it to, oh, Camp Grandpa has calmed our son down. This is a good thing. And that was it. It's funny because little Jimmy actually moved away that summer. The end of the summer, he moved to somewhere across the country, and we never saw him again. So, we never found out what happened to him. And I'm telling this story, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think anything weird happened to him, but it was just so strange how different he was afterwards. So yeah, I mean, if you want to hear more about Camp Grandpa, I got a million stories about Camp Grandpa. So just let me know. That's the story of little Jimmy and the iPad situation. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Bye bye.